Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh on the Mully and Haugh Show on 670 The Score. Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune down in Indianapolis, still covering the NFL Combine. Caleb Williams speaks to the media on Friday, Dan. A lot of buzz about what he might say and the fact that he's speaking at all. A lot of other stuff has gone on besides the quarterback situation and the quarterbacks throwing and talking and all the stuff. How much fun are you having down there, and how much work is getting done by evaluating everybody who isn't Caleb Williams?
Yeah, it's both. I talked to someone this afternoon and said the NFL Combine can be like Las Vegas in the sense that you can approach it 100 different ways and they can all be right, and so you have to kind of find your balance of what you're after, how late you plan to stay out on certain nights, where you're going to go to dinner. There's all these things, and then you get to day 4, which I'm on right now, and you feel like you got to get me out of here. I'm not ready to get out of here yet because, as you mentioned, the quarterbacks will speak to the media on Friday morning. There's a stretch of 2 hours tomorrow at Podium 4 at the Indianapolis Convention Center where we're going to get Jaden Daniels, followed by Caleb Williams, followed by Drake May, followed by Malik Neighbors, and then after that, I think Roman Dunze is a couple podiums down. So it's going to be a lively morning Friday here, and I think we're probably going to learn a lot, and I think Caleb Williams is eager to take the stage and kind of have his say. As you saw since the last time we talked, he spoke with Pete Thamel of ESPN, kind of set the stage for what will come tomorrow. And I think it's the first step in a direction that's going to end with a union with the Chicago Bears.
I've said this on the Mully and Haugh Show and still believe it. That story with Pete Thamel was probably the most significant development in the Caleb Williams saga, if you want to call it that, just because he answered some questions that remained and people wanted to know about his willingness to play in Chicago, any reticence that he might have, his commitment to greatness. Just overall, I think he humanized himself in a way that dispelled some of the unfair and inaccurate perceptions that were being formed about him and did what he needed to do. Friday presents another opportunity. Just that. It's just an opportunity to be who he is, as authentic as possible.
I look down at my list that I've compiled for questions that I'd like to ask Caleb Williams tomorrow. I've got 14 questions down here. If I get 2 in, I'll be proud of myself, because this is going to be, if it were Chicago media only, it would be a scrum. The entire NFL world is here. Getting a spot near Podium 4 on Friday morning is going to be like trying to get, concert tickets that you have to sleep out overnight for. So it's going to be a wild scene. And I feel like there's a lot to get after with Caleb Williams, and we're only going to be able to scratch the surface of that on Friday. I think in the article we mentioned, or the interview that we mentioned with Pete Thamel of ESPN, it was a smart way to approach this with someone that has known Caleb since he was in high school, and gives you an opportunity to put your best foot forward before you go out and meet with the media, but also meet with the teams down here. And it's my sense, and I had a good conversation this afternoon with someone in the league, that there's going to be a natural connection with Ryan Poles and Caleb Williams, because their demeanors are very similar. They are, there's a little, I don't want to say, like, Caleb has a little bit of introversion to him. I don't want to say that about Ryan, but they're very, very low key dudes with a lot of confidence, and you could see where that connection would form. And then for the Bears, as we've talked about, you just have to do the entirety of the homework process. You have to do all of the stops in the pre-draft process with Caleb. You have to get that gut feeling that he's the guy that you want to be the engine of your franchise for the next decade. And then, as I've talked about a little bit this week, you also have to make sure you don't cheat yourself and not do the homework on the other guys as well, because you want to give them their opportunity to have a say, and you don't want to be blinded and going down one road only, because you never know what can happen, and you better make sure that the entirety of your process is lined up.
So we do our best to provide a lot of context and information, certainly the opinions here on Take the North, but I think that there's nothing like, to me, and I know to you still, long form writing and what you're able to do in a 2,000 words or whatever, however long your story was in the Chicago Tribune. I would advise all Bears fans interested in Caleb Williams to check out chicagotribune.com, Caleb Confidential, I think you're calling it, and it's online. It was online Thursday morning, and people can go there. You have a list of 12 things that people can be looking for, and how you kind of broke it down, because you have to break things down in these kind of increments. Yeah. I found most interesting, it was all interesting, but I reread the part where the background checking on Caleb Williams is intensifying. And I wondered, one, where that may have begun in terms of their trip to LA, Cliff Kingsbury, maybe some coaches from the USC staff, as well as where it goes now and how invasive maybe it is into the Caleb Williams profile.
Well, where it began was probably with your scout, your West Coast scout that's going to do a lot of the early work on that during the fall and present you with a pretty comprehensive report on things that he has learned from being near the program and gathering those things. And then, right, when the Bears go out in early January after making coaching changes and they're able to be out West, as we've talked about, doing a handful of interviews, it takes them to Cliff Kingsbury, who is a person that can provide a lot of information. I talked to someone from another team that had met with Cliff Kingsbury during the early parts of January and just expressed how much information he has, and how valuable that can be to setting the record straight on certain things, validating your concerns in other areas, and just trying to figure out where it goes. Where I'm at right now at the end of the scouting combine before we talk to Caleb on Friday is that I think that the Bears are going to really, really enjoy the wiring of Caleb Williams from the standpoint of he truly is determined to be great as a football player. And that is kind of his central goal, is he wants to be a legend and he wants to be someone that people are talking about long after he's done playing football. And I think it's a genuine goal and something that he backs up with work and investment in trying to get better. Where I think some teams are still waiting to get more answers, and most likely the Bears are in this boat, is all of the stuff that's going to come at Caleb Williams as the number 1 overall pick, as the star quarterback potentially of the Chicago Bears in a market like Chicago. Does he have the things around him to handle it well? There's going to be off the field opportunity, marketing, endorsements, people pulling him in one direction, dragging him in another direction. Do you have the ability to understand how to balance your time, set up a routine that's productive, and also understand how much damn work is required to play the position at this league at even a middle tier level? And so I think the Bears have to figure that out, as well as I think the thick skin part of it, David, which I think is one that you're really going to grind on if you're Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus and company.
Along those lines, and maybe there's no way to know this yet, but you do delve into the dad question. Carl Williams has been pretty outspoken. We know he's going to be very involved. We're both dads. We get it. I mean, whether the kid's the top quarterback in the NFL draft or 11-year-old pitcher in a big Little League game, you want to be involved as your son. And I can respect that. But I also wonder how that is going to go in terms of the vetting of Caleb Williams, the concerns about, the helicopter parent syndrome, and what role Carl Williams actually will play in all the things you just said about his time commitments, how many endorsements he does, how available he is, how he handles the public aspect of his job. Because as I've said a lot, this, when you draft a quarterback number 1 overall, he becomes the de facto CEO of your football organization. He's going to need guidance at the age of 23. It's going to be his dad. Sometimes there's an agent. There will be no agent. How concerned should the Bears be about the dad's role?
Well, it's two things. It's getting comfortable with who Carl Williams is, and it's trying to figure out what you just said. If you don't have an agent, who are your advisors, and what is their background? What is their experience? What gives them credibility in this world? The NFL world is a different place, and the seas can get choppy really quick if you're not careful. And so I think teams are really trying to figure out, okay, so who is this team of advisors? Because if it's not a NFLPA certified agent, we need to know who it is that's going to be giving you advice and giving you direction and helping you get your NFL career started in the right way. The Bears also have to take ownership in this if they decide to draft Caleb Williams and help him with that plan. That's part of this. I had written something back in late December, early January about when you use a draft pick like the number 1 pick on a quarterback like this, you have to understand that everyone in your building has to work for him, with him and for him, to make sure that you can get the absolute best out of him, because he is the person that is going to be the one who defines how successful your organization is. And so you have to make sure you set him up for success. That's not just pairing him with a good coaching staff and a veteran quarterback in the room. It's really, really knowing all the off-field stuff that come with this role and with this stage, and making sure that he has the guardrails in to protect him. And right now, I think there's some questions. I can tell you this: there's a lot of stories that get told at the combine, and there are a lot of stories that have been told, after the sun's gone down here, where you say, okay, these are legitimate things you have to dig into if you're the Chicago Bears. If I'm hearing them, the Chicago Bears are certainly hearing them, and they have to get their arms wrapped around that with Caleb. And then again, if they want to have him as their quarterback, they have to work with him to make sure they set him up for success.
Do you get a sense they're loud enough to dissuade them from picking him number one?
No, I don't. And that's where I think it's really interesting. And one of the things I had in the Caleb Williams confidential piece that I thought was notable toward the end is even the people that will kind of raise the red flags and talk to you about like, oh man, I'm not sure about this. I kind of wish this was better. In the end, say that you'll get in a room at some point and you'll circle back to the talent and you'll go, we'll figure it out, because this dude is, you know what I mean? And I think that's the prevailing emotion that's here in Indianapolis, that the Bears are going to probably go into this with a little bit of concern, but also with the attitude of we'll figure it out, and we're eager to figure it out because the talent is that good that you see him, as Ryan Poles did in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, as a guy that changes everything for everyone. And so that's going to be the process here.
And that's why I want to get to this paragraph, which stood out to me along those lines, because let's take it back to the football field. You say Williams is a quick processor. He makes quick decisions. He has quick hands. That's a quick catalyst to next level success. The biggest significance for a team like the Bears, Williams' quickness could allow their offense to function and thrive with the quick passing attack in ways it never could with Justin Fields at the controls. Dan, I think that paragraph summarizes the biggest reason why so many of us are convinced why moving on makes sense. It's not that Justin Fields is a bad quarterback or that you can't win certain games and maybe in a division with him, but there's just a speed at which he doesn't necessarily operate that elite quarterbacks do. And Caleb Williams, based on observation, based on evaluation, has that quickness.
Well, okay, so there's two parts of this. Number one, it's just the idea of the mission here. And I had a coach tell me earlier in the week that if the Bears decided to trade the number one pick and stick with Justin Fields, they'd be fine. He said, they'll be fine. And then he said, do you want to be fine or do you want to be great? And so this is the chance to upgrade. It's the chance to get a guy who does things at a higher level than Justin Fields has. And that's okay, to chase that and to go after that and to work with it. I found that passage that you just read there notable because you do think about some of the struggles, particularly in the early years in year one and year two, where Justin Fields couldn't catch a snap and throw an accurate pass to the outside for a bubble screen. There were those games where you'd be like, man, there were two completions that sailed into the sideline or made the receiver adjust to the point where he was tackled immediately. And all of a sudden you've got those instances that add up where over 38 career starts, you only average 174 passing yards per game. People think Caleb has the ability to just, he's so quick in this regard that you can bake in 45 passing yards for him before the game ever starts just by doing some of this quick game concept. That should help him produce, which should then help him get confidence, which should then help the wheel to really turn there, David. And so, the other part of this, I want to bring this up because I've taken some heat on the social media channel for a comment that ESPN's Matt Miller made about how Caleb's greatest gift is kind of stringing a defense along and holding the ball to the last possible second before finding a receiver and throwing it. And people going, isn't this what you hammered Justin Fields for 3 years? No, it's the ability to kind of have that defense on a string, to get outside the pocket, to be in full control, to have that quarterback feel, that innate instinct on, okay, how long? So you see it with Mahomes all the time. Sometimes Patrick Mahomes makes a 14-yard run just by kind of scrambling calmly, seeing it with his eyes, having people so terrified on the back end. And then he takes off, runs for 14, gets a first down. And it's not anything nearly as electric as Justin Fields does, but it's what quarterbacking in this league means. And so that's kind of where I stand with that.
It's also the purpose of that example, from the way I understood it, was that, okay, this is what he does that illustrates how instinctive he can be. He waits, and he waits just long enough until he can deliver the ball because he knows he's going to get rid of it and he's going to deliver it exactly where he needs to go. That's a big difference. There's a big difference between that and holding on to the ball too long so you take a sack. Right. Or you don't throw it when exactly the guy is open and you wait to until you can't make the completion. So I think that people might be just looking for something there, and I just don't think there's anything really to see, because it was a compliment about the way Caleb Williams can improvise and wait and bait people into situations that he can exploit.
And Justin, listen, like we know what he was as a scrambling runner and how electric that was, but we were still middle of the way into season 3, still trying to get that incremental growth that the coaching staff inside the building talked about as a scramble and throw guy, and Caleb is really good at that. And he's really good at feeling things in the pocket. The one concern that has been consistent is, does your big play ability on the move become too much of a crutch, particularly in your early years, where rather than taking something that's kind of right in front of you, you try to drag a play out and you try to get on the move, and you just kind of almost impede your growth and development because you're leaning on something that works, and we all have that in areas of our life where you're like, okay, this is something I can lean into, but I probably need to challenge myself to get better at the things that are going to make me really, really good at what I do. And so that's going to be a challenge for Caleb.
Nice thing about Caleb Williams, at least as it pertains to your Caleb Confidential on ChicagoTribune.com, there are concerns that obviously about his emotional maturity. There will be concerns about or questions regarding, his sensitivity and things like that. And the fact that he can be, in the eyes of some critics of Caleb Williams, a little bit of a diva. How does that perception, how will that be affected by his decision not to submit to medical testing, not to throw, not to do things and come to the combine and really not fully participate in a way that certainly he has a right to, but people will say, well, that just, okay. See, he's not, if he doesn't have anything to hide, why is he playing games this way? How would you address people that wonder if that is an example of the emotional maturity that critics use against him?
That's not an example, but it's a poignant topic because, first of all, like I don't, have any problems with him not doing the on-field throwing portion of this things, because most people in the league understand who he is in that regard. And so, those drills are for guys that aren't going to be picked 1, 2, or 3, and then guys that want to improve their stock and go out there and do some things. Caleb will throw at his pro day in an at-home setting on March 20th, I believe it is, in Southern California. And that will be an opportunity for people to see him throw there. No big deal there. The pulling out of medical testing is only a concern to me in regards to, is this a trend of trying to buck the system, and trying to create a new set of rules for yourself with everything you do? And like, look, he can answer that for teams. He can tell them why he's choosing to do that. But the pushback question will be, look, like, I get it. You want to kind of challenge norms at times and try to be a guy who is a trailblazer in certain ways, but there is a certain point where the system is the system, and adhering to it is going to be the quickest way to success in some ways. And so the question I'd be asked is, how many of these different things along the way do you plan on doing your own way? Because if it becomes dozens and dozens, well, then it becomes something where you're gonna draw scrutiny from teammates eventually in your locker room that are going, well, wait a second, like, why is this dude trying to go do everything his way when we've all had to do it a certain way forever? That's where I would at least ask some questions in this upcoming process. On the emotional maturity part, I think it's more so like, look, man, if you lose a game where you blow a 21-point lead in the fourth quarter, for example, how do you handle that? Are you as tough-minded and thick-skinned as Justin Fields was? We've talked forever about how that was a gift that he's had for 3 years, the ability to reset, the ability to be hardened and tough and mature when the whole world is watching you. I'll give you an example on, just from my world, where I wake up on Wednesday morning and there is a story from Kalen Kaler on The Athletic about Caleb Williams's family and the dad and business arrangements and that. The Pete Thamel article comes out an hour later. It was a reminder. Colleen and Kane and I talked about it, that like, look, like this is a different dude here. The whole world is going to be watching him for a long time. So there's going to be a story about you written every single day that you're the Chicago Bears quarterback. And do you have the stamina and emotional maturity to go through that on days where you're a little bit moody? Can you handle it gracefully? Can you avoid creating a headline? Can you avoid making comments that then become that week's story? You know what I mean? These are all things that go into play in the position. And then most importantly, if you're in a period of struggle, as it was phrased to me, can you keep your bull bleep from leaking into other people's bull bleep, and can the locker room be a place where people don't need to worry about things that are bothering you, where they can just go to work and be ready to charge their batteries off of you.
Did you think the athletic story and the ESPN.com story were pretty polar opposite? Of one was raising questions about all that Caleb Williams will bring to the table in terms of baggage and high maintenance drama.
Yes.
The other one was him directly addressing the baggage and high maintenance drama with his own voice, which I think we hadn't heard before. So I did think the timing was somewhat strategic, and I wonder how they planned that, or was it a pure coincidence? Because I do think it was impossible to ignore the fact that they were very, very contrasting portraits of the same guy.
Listen, it's purely coincidental, but for me, it's telling because, like I was 85% of the way done with the piece that launched at Chicago Tribune this morning, and you do that because strategically you're like, okay, I've got to launch something on Caleb Williams during Combine Week, and I did, a significant amount of that string gathering before I got here with phone calls prior to that, and then added to it over the last few days, and you just kind of want to have that. Well, obviously, Pete and Kalen had their plans of marking their territory on the Caleb Williams story this week, and it's just an example of, again, the national eyes that are going to be on the Chicago Bears that have not been on the Chicago Bears in a long time. The Chicago market is hard enough. Well, now you are going to be a national story. You know what I mean? And that's why I bring those examples up, because if you guys think you got sick of hearing about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, well, Caleb Williams in 2024 is going to be an every week story. The NFL schedule makers are going to look at opportunities to put them in prime time, right? All of this is going to be a part of your existence that you have to acknowledge first and then plan for. The two men in the building, three men, I'll say that I really trust on this level to be forward thinking and prepared are, Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus, and Kevin Warren in trying to understand, like, okay, this is going to be unique, and we better acknowledge it as unique and have a plan for managing this, because if you don't, it's going to get exhausting for a lot of people really quickly. And so, I mean, you've been around media circuses before. This is going to be a bit of a media circus for a while, and you better have, again, the tent poles to hold up the big top.
Any scuttlebutt, any rumblings, speculation about how his meeting with the Bears went, how he connected with anybody in the room? I can see him, as you said, clicking with Ryan Poles. They do have kind of somewhat similar personalities from the outside, observationally speaking. I don't know about Matt Eberflus and Caleb Williams. I don't know if it matters, because the he's the head coach and the quarterback. It's not the same kind of, symbiosis you necessarily need if Matt Eberflus is calling the offensive plays and designing the defense. I just wonder if you've heard anything about those dynamics, and if you think it matters much how he does get along with his head coach.
It does. And not directly, I haven't heard anything, but from what I shared at the outset from a team that did meet with him and knows Ryan Poles well enough to say, like, look, I think there's going to be a really smooth connection between those two guys just because of the personality. I think it's more important that Caleb Williams establishes a very, very instant chemistry with Shane Waldron, who at the outset of his career is going to be the guy that he needs to be dialed in with every single day. Thomas Brown, as the passing game coordinator, is probably on that list as well. And so you want those things to come together in the next few weeks, whether it's here in Indianapolis, whether it's when the Bears go out to LA. You imagine they're going to have a private dinner with them at some point. You imagine there'll be a visit to 1920 Football Drive in Lake Forest at some point. And so that connection's got to build. I had a coach tell me that when you're in this process of scouting quarterbacks, you can make all the trait lists and the boxes you want to check, and you have talent and character and everything else that goes with it. Sometimes you just got to be in a room with a guy and say, am I going to enjoy coaching that guy? Because this is a hard grinding world that you want to feel energized by on an everyday basis as you pursue success. And so creating that synergy as early as possible, even before you are united as player and team, I think is very important. And I think Shane Waldron is going to be a big part of that here in the weeks ahead.
Let's go to the Justin Fields trade market. The odds have increased for Atlanta being now the favorite to land Justin Fields. Obvious reasons. We don't pay attention necessarily that closely to Vegas in terms of your trade rumors, but they obviously are onto something there in terms of the hometown favorite, the home state guy. Bears are second, and then you go Steelers and Patriots. And I just wonder, Dan, there are a couple reports out there that the Falcons have checked in with the Bears. There's other people I talked to who an executive that I've known for years said that Atlanta thing, don't pay attention to it. It's a smoke screen. Really don't know what to believe. I don't know what you think. Is there a trade market developing for Justin Fields? And could the compensation not be what the Bears maybe want it to be?
Certainly on the latter point, that's been something that has been a bit of a buzz this week in Indianapolis, is that when you don't have a whole line of suitors outside your door, that the asking price may not necessarily be in your wheelhouse. And so that's going to be really interesting. I think among many things, that's going to be an interesting development if and when the Bears do trade Justin Fields, is what to get back. The Atlanta thing has there's been smoke this week. It surprises me because I think Zach Robinson, the new offensive coordinator out there, runs an offense that's very, very similar to what Luke Getsy and Shane Waldron run. Is part of the same Shanahan-McVay type of scheme, and Justin struggles with certain things in there. And so, you got to get your arms around that if you're the Atlanta Falcons and figure out, okay, how are we going to amend this and adapt this so that we don't have a year or two of people screaming, you're not running the right system for the guy. You got to run a better system for the guy. And then people losing their jobs because of it. So we'll see where that goes. Again, free agency is less than 2 weeks away now. Ryan Poles kind of insinuated that in an ideal world, they would be able to give a new team Justin Fields as their new quarterback before that gets there. And this is the week to try to start to lay the groundwork for that. And so, you got to be ready for something any minute, any day, while also understanding that it may not be imminent as Ryan Poles figures through things.
How much conversation has there been, speculation about what the Bears might do at number 9, or is it way too early for that? Because last year at this time, they had the number 9 pick, and we were going crazy, mock drafting somebody different every day.
It's a great point, man. And I've had this conversation multiple times this week where, like, in most years, we would be, in the deep end of the pool with the number 9 pick, talking every single day about what in the world was going to happen there and what the intriguing options were. And honestly, because of all this quarterback stuff with Justin Fields, with Caleb Williams, with the number 1 pick, we're going to spend like 3 days on the number 9 pick as we get into late April. And it's a fascinating territory. And there's, the evaluators, the draft analysts, see it as really fertile ground for the Bears, because there's going, especially if there's an early run on quarterbacks and you get a 4th guy to come off the board before number 9. Well, now all of a sudden you're pushing talent at positions that the Bears will need down in an area where maybe a Malik Neighbors is there, maybe a Rome Odunze is there to pair with a new quarterback. And you go, man, we just got our shiny new toy, a shiny new toy. And how fun could that be? There's the practical approach of saying this is a very talent loaded, top heavy offensive tackle class. So if you decide, hey, we want the opportunity to provide more protection and comfort for our new quarterback, you've got an option there to either take a standout left tackle at number 9, or let me throw this one at you, the possibility of possibly trading down and then looking at some of these right tackles in a way where you say, we really like this guy as a right tackle, and we feel like Darnell Wright has the position flexibility to slide over to the left side. That versatility and that flexibility gives you options in a way where I think there are a lot of people, and I'll write about this here in the coming weeks when the quarterback stuff dies down. That's cool flexibility that Ryan Poles will have to try to provide a supporting cast for his quarterback that becomes really, really solid.
That's intriguing. I hadn't thought about that. I think that if they are at 9 and they're considering drafting an offensive lineman, they may want to accumulate assets. But if you have the sure thing in Joe Alt from Notre Dame, and he's been described to me a couple of different ways as, one of the surest things, because obviously he's got good bloodlines. He played in an elite program, and that's a very good offensive line producer at Notre Dame. He could be tough to pass.
No question. I don't think anyone thinks that Joe Alt will be on the board at 9, and so then it's like, okay, is Olu Fashanu there? And people didn't think Jalen Carter would have been there.
What if 4 quarterbacks go in the top 8, and what if
then the 3 receivers go, right? Yeah.
And so
you're right.
So
and
it's conceivable in a pass rush. You could see the Bears getting the number 1 offensive player or quarterback in Caleb Williams, and then getting the number 1 left tackle, or maybe the number 1 edge rusher, or the number 2 wide receiver. If there's a run on quarterbacks and wide receivers, they could be in a great situation. And I do think you want to take the gimme in that point, because there are no character issues about Joe Alt. There aren't character issues the way that you would be weighing and scared of, maybe embracing with Jalen Carter. This isn't 2023's draft. So we don't talk about the number 9 overall pick, but you're talking about a day one impactful starter who could be in Chicago for a very long time.
Yes, and then in May, we're all going to step back and go, holy cow, we should have spent more time working on that guy in the pre-draft process. Penn State's Olu Fashanu, a little footnote for our audience, played high school football with Caleb Williams. So that's a note where you'd have a standout offensive tackle who has, history already with the quarterback that seems to be there. So there's a lot of intriguing possibilities. I had one coordinator say to me, look, like if I'm coaching the Bears offense and I'm Shane Waldron, like I'm just absolutely being a bully in the draft room and saying we need 2 offensive players in the top 10. Like if we're going to take a quarterback, the second pick has to be an offensive player because we're going to do this the right way by getting the quarterback a star right away, a star, that can grow with them. And so like Shane Waldron seems to be a really nice guy. He's going to have to put some of that aside during these pre-draft process.
I agree
to kind of shout down his defensive centric head coach and go, wait a second, Matt, like get me another guy on offense.
Go buy a pass rusher, go figure it out, draft one in the later rounds, develop that guy, because I couldn't agree more. Your defense is the reason you're in a position to, number one, keep your head coach, but secondly, feel good about drafting a rookie quarterback that can balance both sides of the ball. So you're pretty good on defense. Maintain the focus on offense, whether it's a tackle, wide receiver, or whatever the case may be. But I would definitely go offense with your second pick too.
No question. And it looked like that number 9 spot is it's going to be fun on draft night because you're going to have somebody go up to the stage, give Roger Goodell that heavy hug, hold up that Bears jersey, and then it's going to be like an hour and a half later, and you go, well, wait a second, they're back on the clock, and look at this board, look at this best player available list that's scrolling through the screen, and then obviously Ryan will be prepared for that. He'll have done 197 mock drafts before then to prepare himself for whatever situation is there. And Joel, by the way. Yeah. They have a room at Hallis Hall where the Notre Dame fight song just continually plays on a loop. We've seen with Cole Kmet and Equanimous St. Brown, and for a short time, Chase Claypool.
But I thought they unplugged it when Chase Claypool left.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway.
Is that the same room that Equanimous St. Brown does the podcast? Because will he be there that long? All right, so Caleb Williams meets the NFL media on Friday. Then over the weekend, the quarterbacks will participate in certain drills. He will not throw. He will not submit the medical testing. Do we know if he will be measured, Dan?
Yes, yes, he will go through the measurements, is my understanding, and so you'll get that.
So brace yourself for when he measured 6 feet 1/4 inch. Brace yourself for the too short stuff.
Passed him in the hallway today in the Indianapolis Convention Center. Does not come across as short when you're in his presence. Most teams aren't really concerned with that because that's there. But yeah, no, we'll see where it goes. Couple small footnotes for you, because I know we're wrapping up here. Number one, totally out there, just a few different people have brought up the prospects of Darnell Mooney leaving in free agency, reuniting with Matt Nagy in Kansas City, and people feeling very optimistic that as a speed weapon for Patrick Mahomes, like he might be able to take a short-term, low-money contract and revive his career in a way where we're all going next January like, holy cow, look what Darnell Mooney did. People have brought that up.
I could see that. Yeah. I could see that. Look at their top receiver, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. You telling me that Mooney can't do for that offense what he did?
Yeah, and so there's obviously something there. The other thing, just a little snapshot from the combine late Wednesday night. Kevin Spain and I had, as we're walking into Prime, former Bears coach John Fox is walking out of Prime, so good to see Foxy on the way out. And then when we get in there a little bit, sitting down and conversing for a little bit, Allen Robinson is there. We say hello to Allen Robinson, who's been coming to the combine the last few years. I think he has designs on being an agent after his playing days are done. And he turned around and said, hey, what's up, fellas? What are the Bears going to do with the number 1 pick? It's literally the first thing that everyone wants to talk about. And it was cool to see A-Rob as eager as anybody to get an answer on that. And then obviously, as opinionated as he is, he had some thoughts as well. And he thinks that the Bears will use the pick on a quarterback.
Didn't he finish the season with the Steelers?
Yes.
Yeah. So Justin Fields could be throwing him the football once again. Or did he ever throw the football to him? Yeah, reunited.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. He did.
Yeah.
They did. Good stuff. There's always something around every corner in Indianapolis. Glad you're down there. Great job on the story. Again, ChicagoTribune.com, Caleb Confidential. You want to check it out. The 12 reasons and things that they're looking for, and just a good breakdown of what everyone's talking about this week as it pertains to the Bears. All right, we'll check back in after the quarterbacks talk on Friday quickly to kind of evaluate what things were said and what kind of hints were dropped again. Anything else, Dan, before we wrap it up?
No, for those watching on YouTube, this is my setup here at the Residence Inn here in Indianapolis. One more night here in this beautiful palace that I'm in, and then one more day, obviously, of grinding out work at the combine. But if you're wondering why I'm in front of a fridge and a microwave, I've got a nice setup here this week.
And if you're wondering why I'm in a jacket, I'm doing Football Night in Chicago, talking more about Caleb Williams and Justin Fields, the favorite topic of the offseason. All right, for Adam Sadzinski, our producer, Dan Wiederer, who is in Indianapolis from the Chicago Tribune. Oh, by the way, I don't think that we have been on the air. Dan Wiederer won a top 10, was honored by the APSE Beat Writer of the Year in the largest division, one of the top 10 beat writers in America. We are lucky to have him here on the Take the North podcast. It's a huge honor. People benefit from reading him every day in the Chicago Tribune, chicagotribune.com. Congratulations, Dan. Tremendous, tremendous achievement.
Thank you for saying that, David. You're very, very kind. You know what you mean to me as a teammate, and I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate all your support. You're helpful to me at every stop along the way. And, look, like you were on the Tribune staff when I started 11 years ago, almost 11 years ago now. And so it's crazy to look back and think about all that's changed. But thank you for saying that. I really appreciate you, man.
I miss newspapers every time I read you. All right. Had a lot of fun here. You can check us out on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. You can watch us on the 670 Scores YouTube page. Take the North. Let us know what you think. You can send us an email at takethenorthpod@gmail.com for a mailbag issue later. And also, you can tweet at us, as you well know, because we have an active social media audience. And thank you for all the interaction and all the listening. We'll talk to you next time on the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.